Now there's a throwback for you retro enthusiasts in the audience. Yes, indeed. What's up, folks? It's Parallax Abstraction, and welcome to another Indie Showcase. This is a game that kind of came out of nowhere a little while back. It was just sort of announced out of the blue, and it's very interesting because while 3D Realms, which is a actually now former division of Apogee Software, has been in the news a lot lately, Apogee themselves have been pretty quiet, other than releasing a lot of basically re-releasing a lot of their old stuff on places like Steam the last few years. But this is actually a remaster of one of their OG classics. This is Crystal Caves HD. A lot of you might not know what Crystal Caves was, but for a lot of old school DOS gaming enthusiasts like myself, you probably heard this and were like, what? Yes, indeed. This has been quite a pleasant surprise, to be honest with you. The story behind it is quite fascinating. Basically, there is a single-person Slovenian developer named Emberhard Games. You can see the person's name down there, who I'm not going to butcher it by trying to pronounce it. Who actually just did an interesting mock-up on Twitter one day of how he would do an HD remake of Crystal Caves. And Apogee just reached out to him and went, "Hey, that's really cool. How about you actually do that?" And that's how we ended up with this. Fascinating little story. But he did literally everything except the music, which is something the original Crystal Caves actually didn't have. And astonishing work, I'm going to say in general here. So yeah, Crystal Caves is I'm going to call it an old school puzzle platformer. It is a platformer, but the later levels in particular are very puzzle-like because you can do them wrong and basically kind of screw yourself. But this is a fantastic throwback to the DOS era with a ton of modern features added into it that I've really been impressed with, including an entire new level. So this was originally released under the Shareware model, which was that the first episode of the game, this is something that happened a lot in the DOS era, the first episode of the game was released for free. You could just download it and play it, and then what you were supposed to do is if you wanted to play the rest of them, you were supposed to buy them by mail order. You actually sent money into Apogee, and they would send you back a disc with the other episodes on them. Now, of course, a lot of people pirated them as well, but this is a model that was used by Apogee, the original incarnation of Epic Games, id Software, a lot of historically very successful companies. And this was one of the original Apogee products, and well, so there was 3 episodes, and the first one was Shareware, but in this remake, we've actually got, well, not only a remake of all the production values, but also a whole other 4th episode, as well as a bunch of other things that I'm going to show you here. Now, you may be looking at this off the bat and going, this looks pretty old school. Like, what kind of a remaster or HDification is this? Well, when you compare it to the original, which is actually available on Steam, you can actually buy it right now if you want, you'll see that this is quite a step up from the original in many ways. The animation quality in particular has been substantially improved, and obviously the music has been added. Some people are a little hot and cold on the music. I personally think the music is a fine addition. Yes, it does sound like something that came off of an NES sound chip, which is not really in keeping with the fact that this was originally a DOS game. But you know what? I actually like it. I think it does a nice job. I think it adds to nice, and you can turn it off, of course, if you don't like it. All of the original levels are untouched, so you're going to get the original experience just with this, far better graphical treatment, obviously. And there is an entire new episode in this. So we'll talk about some of the other stuff after the fact here. But, so what's the point of this game? Well, it's an old school puzzle platformer where your objective is, there's a story behind it, it's goofy, it doesn't really matter, it's goofy, but it's cute. And your objective in this is to get into, well, all of these different crystal caves and collect all of the crystals and leave. Now, you'll see there in the bottom left corner you have a score which is measured in dollars. Now, while you do have to collect all of the crystals in order to leave, there's a bunch of optional things in most of the other levels. There's enemies you can destroy that will give you extra points. There are hidden gems in a lot of the levels. There are certain types of they're not really power-ups, but they're basically fruit pickups that can activate if you fulfill certain conditions, and if you get those, you get extra points. And the more points you get, obviously, the better. This is an old-school game in that respect. This new version does have online leaderboards, which is actually really, really cool. So it gives you a little bit of a competitive edge there. I'm already getting slaughtered on them because, you know, the old school DOS players are already kicking my butt. Now you're going to see in some of the levels, well, actually all the levels, you'll see something like this. So you can actually make an accidental screw up and shoot that air thing by accident, which will result in you dying. There are mushrooms in this that will give you points. There are other mushrooms in this that are poisonous and will kill you. The enemies can kill you. And there are a number of other things to do. Now, this game doesn't, like a lot of old-school platformers at the time, particularly that you would have seen on consoles, this game does not have a live system. If you fail a level, you go back to the start of the level and you do it all over again. There's no checkpoints. Now, you saw there at the beginning that there was sort of that overworld map. One of the things that's neat about this is each of the episodes has a number of different levels in it. The first episode here has 16. And the cool thing about it is that you can walk through that overworld and attack the levels in any order you want. So because this game is, to a certain degree, a puzzle game, and you may run into levels, particularly later on in the game, where you kind of are like, I don't know what to do here, that's really nice because it gives you the ability to move on to something else and maybe come back when you've had a good think about it, as opposed to just being stuck there and being like, well, crap, this sucks, what do I do now? So you see there that I picked up all the gems. We got a green border around the outside of the screen, which means I'm now free to exit, though I had to pull switches to open these two doors to be able to leave. And there we go, I was lucky, I got it without taking any hits, so I get an extra 50 grand. As you can see, there's a lot of different ways in order to maximize your score in this game. And really that's the objective of it, is not just to finish the level, but to try to get as high a score as you can. And you basically go through each level in the episode until you complete them all, and then you get a little story beat and you finish it. Now you see there, by fulfilling a condition, I made that banana appear. I'm not going to get to it in time, but if I did, that would be some extra points. So you have incentive to replay the levels and sort of min-max them. You'll see that there's locked chests up there as well. You can unlock, you can find keys in levels that allow you to unlock those. Again, optional, but they're worth more points. You see there was a hidden gem in this thing, where in this platform that I'm sort of hitting Mario style. Again, optional, but worth a lot of extra points. So the levels actually have a lot of variety to them and a lot of incentive to go back and replay them. You can actually get, like, sort of mainlining, getting a lot of the extras, but not all of them. I was able to beat the first episode in about 90 minutes. I'm going to tell you right now, the first episode is a lot easier than the other ones from a puzzling perspective. Some of the levels in the later episodes of this game get positively gnarly, and they will really challenge you. And that's a key thing to make known here, because this is definitely a puzzle platformer. This is not a Mario game. You know, I love the Mario games, don't get me wrong, but the Mario games are very much about skill and reflex much more than they're not really puzzle games. And indeed, if puzzle platformers are not really your jam, this is probably not going to fit for you, to be honest with you. And it does get very challenging. I only ever played the Shareware episode, so the one that we're playing now of Crystal Caves back in the day. I never actually got the registered version, so I never played the other episodes. Having played just poked at the episodes or the levels in episodes 2, 3, and especially episode 4, which is the one that Emberheart Games added, this don't mess about. You know, and the thing with the later levels in this as well is it is possible to get yourself stuck in a position where you can't progress, where basically you've failed to complete something the way it wants you to, and there's nothing you can do. And you'll see here that you've got to learn the levels a little bit too, because you'll see that Milo, who's your character here, can walk through and jump up through the vast majority of the level geometry types, but not all of them. So there's going to be a lot of levels where you're sort of looking at it and assuming that everything is solid are going to go, well, I don't understand. What am I supposed to do here? And that's going to take some... It's going to take some real ingenuity to figure some of these things out. And you may have noticed as well some of the enemies, like that little sort of green tadpole thing, they actually move in a... they actually move in a randomized pattern. Some of the enemies in this game are not predictable. Some of them are, but some of them aren't. And so sometimes if RNGesus is not on your side, the game's just gonna... The game could just get extra challenging because of that. You know, the thing with these old school titles, right, and this was the case on consoles as well as PC, is because of the limitations of the hardware that they were working on at the time, they had to make games very challenging to make up for a lack of content. And by lack of content, I mean that they weren't necessarily able to make a billion different levels. So if you wanted to make your game a decent length, you had to make it really tough. That was how they got around it. And this is no exception. This game will give a lot of hours, specifically because of the fact that it's going to rack your brain. You know, if you have a real noggin for these kinds of things, maybe you won't find it so bad. But in some cases, it will be very, 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 very challenging. But you can see here, so I got through there. Oh, so the blue door is up there. So you see, I did pick up the key. So if I want to go through that blue door, I can go and pick up those locked chests there and get a pile of extra points. Or I could just choose to peace out of the level, get it done, and move on. And that may be enough for you. If you're someone who is obsessive about score, especially with the leaderboards that this game has, and I mean most old school players like myself often will be. So you see that the chests all have a value between 1,000, 2,000, and 5,000, and that's set by the level designer. So you'll see here that there's quite a bit of variety in this, and these are the simpler levels. So here, we'll back out here. So let's go back here and I'll show you. So you see, what's really interesting about this that I find is it's got this NES-style music that they added, but this game didn't have sound card support back in the day. It was that old. So all it did was it worked through the PC speaker. And they actually kept those old-school PC speaker sound effects, but layered the... I'm not going to say new music, but it is new music, but you know what I mean. It's not modern style sounding music. But they layered music that I guess was kind of the time, but of sort of a different system on top of that. I think it's a really interesting mix that adds things, makes things interesting. So this is the third episode here. And you're going to see that, so I'm just skipping through it, but there is those little story preludes. But we're in the third episode now, and this is where things are going to start to get really gnarly. So you check this out. Because there's things that fall from the ceiling. Like, this game almost has a little bit of Spelunky in it, in the sense that there are things that will fall from the ceiling, there are things that will, there's all kinds of randomized hazards, things like that. And you see, now I'm on this lower level, there's multiple enemies down here. There's all kinds of things going on, and you gotta basically figure this out, and chances are, there's a good chance that you will straight up fail to figure out the level numerous times, and are going to have to really sit and sort of ponder how to get through it. And that type of game that type of old school platforming is not for everybody. I definitely appreciate that. This is a game that may not necessarily appeal to everybody. Nice little throwback reference there as well. So you see, I opened a door. I don't even know where the red door is. So, you know, I gotta go figure this out, and you see you've got to jump through a whole bunch of different platformers in order to pull this off. It's not straightforward, not at all. But that's that's the appeal of this type of game, and it definitely throws back to a certain particular kind of nostalgia. Puzzle platformers like this, see, here's what happens if you shoot the air. Whoops. Oh dear. And you see you start right back at the beginning. But puzzle platformers like this were something that you definitely saw more often on PCs than on consoles. It was kind of a unique thing. I'm actually going to I have another game in the hopper for Indie Showcase that also takes a genre that was very well known on consoles and approaches it in a very different way that was much more common on the PC. And it sort of shows the difference between how home computers and consoles were and how they approached, in some cases, the same genre of game. This is very much that as well. So there's the red door that I opened. So you see, and this one's still pretty tame compared to some of them. So, a lot of challenge there, right? Now, you may be going, okay, well that's interesting, but aside from the visual flair, and I quit the game by accident because I wasn't paying attention, herpaderp, So you may be asking, okay, well, other than the visual flair, you know, what is the main difference between this and the original Crystal Caves? Why would I, you know, wouldn't I just go and buy that, which is cheaper? Well, indeed. There's a few different things. Number one is the leaderboards. So you have that. I will say this main menu is ordered in a very strange way. The way they lay things out here is kind of not the most intuitive thing. But you see you've got your leaderboards. So you've got yourself, you've got your friends, you've got global. Yeah. I don't even. I can't even begin to, like, I have 800,000 and I thought I was doing all right, but yeah, this has already gotten kind of crazy. But you've got leaderboards. This game does have Steam achievements in it. Some of them are quite difficult, actually. Some of the achievements in this might be really, really tough for some people to get, I think. But you know, there is obviously, the levels vary in a lot of different ways, but here's probably the biggest thing, which is that the game has not only Steam Workshop support, it has a fully featured level editor. And it's kind of impressive, the amount of work that went into this. Now, I'm not going to go detailing this because it would take way too long, but I'm actually going to link in the description of the video to an excellent video that LGR did on his Blurbs channel, which is his secondary channel, where he spent about an hour creating a new Crystal Caves level from scratch that he actually did upload to Steam Workshop. So if things like level editors are really interesting to you and you really want to get a deep dive on what this one is like, then go watch that video. Again, link is in the description. But you can go into the Steam Workshop and download any of the levels that people have made. So I've downloaded a few already. This is actually LGR's video. So, but it's really well done. You just find the level that you want, you just tap on it, and it downloads it, and then it's ready to go. So I am playing this with a controller, which it works fine with. This game is very digital in its inputs. Keyboards would be fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But here's Selective Nostalgia, which is the level that you'll get to see LGR do his first draft of in that video. You'll see here there is hazards for days in this thing. There's these fire pipes, there's this air sucker thing that sort of pulls you towards it. There's all kinds of nutty stuff. Now, this level has no music in it because LGR is actually one of the people who is not the biggest fan of the music in this game. When you create your levels, you can actually turn the music on or off for it. Like I said, I kind of like the music, but, you know, subjective taste is subjective. But you can see here, you can have a lot going on in this thing if you really want to. And, you know, some of the levels people have made are very simple, and just like in something like Mario Maker, you know, some of the levels are utterly mad, and, you know, these kind of things where you're like, how did you make this Rube Goldberg nightmare? Which, you know, levels like that, I'm no good at them. I don't really like to play levels like that, but I like to, I love to look at them and see the incredible lengths that people will go to, in some cases pushing the level editors to places that even the original designer wasn't necessarily intending, right? And I love that stuff. I think that's really cool, and that's what this does. Ah, crap, I shot the air thing. Dang it. So, yeah, but I think that was a brilliant addition to this game, because even if you spend all the time completing all 4 levels, and even mastering all 4, not levels, episodes in this game, which will give you a lot of playtime, you can expand it with this. You can go, you know, you want to start playing around with games, you can make your own levels, you know. You can you know, you can write your own little stories for them, which I love. You know, you can just, in a couple of clicks, go and download somebody else's. Oh, God. This is a level where there's no light. Well, that's brutal. Yeah. But you see, people have come up with some really innovative things, and I love seeing stuff like this. I think it's really cool. Here's something called Crystal Warehouse. Again, look at the complexity of this. Like, look at the detail that the editor allows you to get into. It's pretty bonkers. I think it's really neat. I kind of wish they would leave it up to the user to turn on music in edited levels if they wanted, but, you know, whatever. I will admit, I mean, the music, as good as it is, you know, there's a handful of tracks, and it can get a little bit repetitive after a while. But you see here how we can kind of go through a lot of different level objects? Yeah, you've got to sort of learn how that works in order to be able to figure out the best way to traverse everything, you know, and not get yourself screwed like that. So, yeah. So, yeah, but this is the kind of remaster I really like to see, because it was made with an incredible amount of love and care by people who clearly respect this old IP, wanted to see a modernization of it done right, and didn't just, you know, drop out some low-effort thing as a cash grab. That's clearly not what Apogee and Emberheart were doing here. They did something really impressive. They even added difficulty levels to the game, which were not in the original. Now, it doesn't change the levels. All it does, as you can see, is it changes how much score you get, how much health you have, and how much, you know, lower enemy health or less ammo, things like that. So it changes the sort of behind-the-scenes conditions, and that's kind of nice, because when you're making a level, you can set the difficulty, and it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change how you have to design your level. It just changes the mechanics behind the scenes, which I think is really, really smart. But yeah, from almost the first moment I fired this up, when Apogee very graciously gave me a code for it, I was just like, this is a game that was made, again, there's a lot of heart in this, Ember heart, if you will, and it's just very well made. You gotta like this kind of game, obviously. You gotta be into these old school puzzle platformers. And I like the fact that they didn't go all the way with the HDifying. They didn't turn it into a 3D game. They didn't do all of this other stuff that was frankly not necessary. They took the old graphics, made them look better, added music, and added a bunch of the cool quality of life features that platforms like Steam offer. And that's kind of it. And they added a new episode, which is also really nice. I think there's some pretty darn good value for money in here if you're into this older type of game. If you saw me play this for a little bit and was like, this genre's not really my jam, this probably won't convert you. But I played a lot of this stuff back in the day, and it still plays really well, and I still quite enjoy it, and there's still a lot of challenge in this, even for modern gamers. So, yeah. Thank you guys very much for watching this indie showcase of Crystal Caves HD. If you did like what you saw here, please hit all the buttons, like, subscribe, hit the bell so that you find out more stuff. I also am back streaming on twitch.tv/pxabstraction, doing multiple variety streams a week, all kinds of cool stuff over there, both new and old. And definitely, do you have some fondness for Crystal Caves? Were you looking for an HD version of this? What other old school titles like this would you love to see this kind of care and attention taken to in terms of HD remakes? I'd love to know about that. Leave them down in the comments down below and let me know what you guys think. So, thank you very much for watching, everybody, and I will see you on the next episode of Indie Showcase. You folks have yourselves a good one. Take her easy.